Have you ever felt in love? Your heart races, you can't stop staring, the room feels different, and time seems to slow down. Your palms sweat, your cheeks warm, and suddenly, even the most ordinary moments feel magical. Hey, wake up! The truth is, everyone seems to be in love too. Well, maybe except you. And you start to ask yourself, what's wrong with me? Am I enough? Will I ever find it? On the contrary, though, even the girl who seems to have it all, the one in the relationship, she might be just as confused. She asks herself, what happens next? Is this happiness? Or is it just another illusion? So, for many wondering, the big question is, what does being in love really mean for teens today? And what makes a relationship feel real? Hi, I'm Laura.
And I'm Anushka.
And we're the co-hosts for The People We Meet, a podcast where we dive into stories and conversations from teen perspectives. In this episode, we'll be shining a light on something that touches almost every teenager's life, something we talk about a lot, but we don't always talk about honestly. Dating, love, and what it means to feel enough. As teens, it's really easy to feel like everyone else is in a relationship, like you're the only one who's left out, or you have to change yourself to be loved. Those feelings of loneliness and self-doubt can really weigh you down.
So, to get a first-hand perspective, I sat down with Audrey, a current freshman in college, to hear about her story of navigating high school relationships and the pressures she noticed her peers faced.
Listen closely to her story, and then stick around because I'll later be unpacking it with Gwen Shiramonti, a licensed clinical social worker with over 30 years of experience, who will help us explore how teens build self-worth even in a world where love and dating can sometimes feel overwhelming.
Okay, amazing. So, can you just introduce yourself and tell us your name and where you're from and what you're gonna do?
So my name is Audrey. I am a former student of Mountain View High School, and I'm currently going to University of California, Santa Cruz, and I'm going to be studying political science.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Audrey. So just kind of like a preface to what we're gonna talk about. So, for this episode, we kind of wanted to dive into what relationships and kind of romantic relationships look like for teenagers today. So I think mainly we just would love your perspective about kind of that transition from high school into college and what you've observed kind of Gen Z teens, sort of what they feel about relationships or the trends with it. So I kind of just want to ask you first, growing up, did you feel like there was a lot of pressure to be in a relationship during high school?
Definitely. I would say with a lot of the media we consume, there's always pressure of finding the one, and especially finding the quote unquote one so young, especially in school. I feel like we've all seen those movies. We grew up with a Cinderella story with Hilary Duff, and they're in high school, which is crazy to think about because they're played by 30-year-olds, so it's unrealistic standards of, I guess, what people are going to look like, too, and what we think we're going to look like as well, and be, of the mindset to, actually be in a relationship, let alone a healthy one. So, yeah, I definitely do think that there is quite a lot of pressure to be in a relationship within high school.
Do you feel like that sort of pressure started, as early as, for example, ninth grade, or do you feel like it kind of peaks a little bit higher for, upperclassmen?
I would say it peaks less as an upperclassman, to be honest, just from my experience, just because I think as you get older, you kind of realize the dating pool, if that makes sense, and you kind of are I don't, you see what your friends are doing, you see what other people around you in school are doing, you just hear different stories and stuff, I guess, so you kind of start to realize, okay, I came in as a freshman thinking, I'm going to have a boyfriend, senior year, and it's going to be super romantic, and then you're a senior, and you're kind of maybe you do or don't have a relationship. That depends on the person, but you kind of realize, this is a high school relationship. It's not, the love of my life. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but yeah, definitely that pressure kind of loosens a little bit for sure.
For sure. No, thank you for sharing that. Do you feel like social media kind of like plays a part in sort of the pressure we feel, or a lot of teens feel to be like in a romantic relationship?
Absolutely, absolutely. I would say a lot of it, yeah, I mean, you hear it from, like, TikTok, I would say, or you just see short videos of, like, people being, like, prom, and then, like, you'd see that, and little do you know, like, they could be friends or something, but, like, in your mind, like, you don't know that person personally, right? So you immediately assume that, like, oh, they're in love, and look at the way they are, and it's like, why can't I find something like that? Or that's just, like, the way your brain immediately goes to, like, I guess those more negative thoughts even about yourself of why you can't find something, or just, like you said, like, that pressure, right? But yeah, definitely, like, the media we consume and social media and, like, Instagram posts, especially around, like, dance seasons, like, homecoming, or you see, like, I don't know, I remember there was a lot of, like, senior sunset stuff, and, like, you could see couples and stuff. So you would definitely be like, okay, like, damn, I don't have that. Like, there's definitely, like, a feeling there, but, yeah.
No, for sure. And I feel like you kind of brought up the point about how, like, those relationships represented aren't necessarily healthy. Kind of, if you're comfortable sharing, in your experience, like, how have you witnessed, like, healthy versus, like, toxic relationships amongst, like, your peers? Like, what are kind of the sort of differences you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I really can't speak for everyone. Everyone has a really unique experience with dating in high school, and also depends on your area and where you're from and who you are and what you value, what you don't. But I would definitely say, like, as an overall trend of what I noticed and experienced, just based on the people around me and myself, I wouldn't say I necessarily experienced or saw people experience anything, like, abusive, so per se, but definitely more toxic. Like, just because, I mean, if you really do think about it, like, we don't see it at the time, but we're kids, right? Like, we're in high school, but we're still kids. And we're definitely at that age where we see ourselves as older than what we actually are. And a lot of those times that leads us to believe that we're ready for something more than we are, or be let on. And I think, especially with girls, a lot of us are a lot more mature than guys of our age, and especially like in heterosexual relationships, a lot of the time was like, you'll definitely see the guys kind of trailing behind, or is quote unquote not ready for stuff as serious, or like is just not really wanting to, like, quote unquote commit, and, like, you know, stuff like that. I would definitely notice trends like that. So I wouldn't say it was necessarily, like, yeah, like I said, abusive or anything, like, horrible, but just there's quite a lot of, like, words like situationship and, like, things like that, and the way you see that. So yeah, that's definitely what I've experienced and saw.
No, thank you that's, like, such a great point, because I actually also wanted to ask you, I think part of what social media is kind of, like, exasperated even further are just these, like, different, like, kind of, like, terms, I guess, like, right? Like, and it's insane that it's almost, like, relationship slang, I want to say, right? Like, situationship, like, oh my god, maybe, like, hallway crush, like,
Love bombing.
Love bombing.
Love bombing, definitely.
No,
like
for sure. And, like, in terms of, like, your perspective, do you feel that, like, since you've started, like, using social media in high school, do you feel like that those sort of, like, things exist, or, like, people openly use, like, relationship slang a lot?
Like, in real life?
In real life, yeah.
Oh, I mean, I use it myself for sure. And I think a lot of the times, like, social media actually influences us to, like, God, I'm saying that wrong. Influences us to, like, yeah, like, to think a certain way, or, like, be more negative about the current, like, relationship or moment you have, when in reality it's honestly usually just, like, two kids that aren't great at regulating their own emotions and are obviously dealing with a lot of stuff, like the pressure of school, a lot of things like that. And a lot of the times we find it really easy to be like, oh, like, he's ghosting me, or, like, you know, things like that. Like, you know, like, we put it onto that, and this is not to, like, invalidate anyone's feelings. Obviously, people can be really hurt, but a lot of times you really need to step back and be like, this is high school. Like, I'm dealing with someone in high school. I myself am in high school. It's not as dramatic as we make it out to be, I feel. And definitely moments where I've definitely been more dramatic than it really needed to be, because in the long run, it's like, you won't even think of that person in, like, 2 months from now, you know? Or not 2 months, like, a year from now, you know?
Right, yeah.
So definitely I think there's a negative impact, but also at the same time I think it's really nice because a lot of times people can find community and like using those words, or like you'll hear someone say something funny like in the halls that like has one of those like slang terms, I guess, like situationship, and like you'll hear that and be like, oh my god, girl, me too, you know, and stuff like that. So yeah.
No, for sure. Like, I think it's honestly fascinating because when you think about it, like, romantic relationships have, like, been part of humanity since the beginning of time. And, but it's so interesting that, like, now relationships have just sort of become, like, part of, like, the way we talk about them is so different from even, like, let's say 5 years ago. And it kind of shows that, like, not only does social media kind of control like how we interact with like other people, but it's kind of changing completely how we perceive like different parts of social life and like different social skills. Because I was just thinking about this the other day, but like most of our humor comes from social media, our sense of humor, the way we talk, the way we dress, and of course also relationships, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's entirely, like, niche to Gen Z. I wouldn't say that any other generation has experienced this.
Definitely not. I mean, if you think about it, like, all of us grew up with screens, right? Even if it, like, some more than others, obviously, but like, it was all a known thing. And I think, yeah, like you said, it's really funny to think about, like, if you were to delete, like, social media, you'd probably be, like, really behind on, like, what some people were saying. Like, I think about that all the time. I'm like, there's always a new joke, like, every few days or something like that. Like, even sometimes, like, my friends will mention something, and I'm like, wait, I haven't gotten to that part yet, you know, like, wait, mind or something. So, yeah, it's definitely really, really fascinating, yeah.
Yeah. So, I also kind of want to ask you, looking back on your past 4 years of high school, do you feel like peers rushed into relationships?
Absolutely. I don't think we really need to talk about that one. Definitely, just because I think that a lot of high schoolers, especially girls, are more obsessed with the idea of having a boyfriend and doing boyfriend and girlfriend like things rather than the actual person that they're interested in. And a lot of the times it's like rose-colored glasses, you know, like it's very like, oh, but like, you know what, I met his parents, and it's like, but how did you meet his parents? Like, did you have a nice sit-down dinner, or did you just say hi? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
It's like often romanticize those sort of things, and we build it up to be a bigger thing than it actually is. And so because of that, and because it's so new, and because it could be your first time for many things, you definitely into it, and you're like, wait, no, but I'm obsessed with that like constant dopamine hit that you get from talking to this person. So you rush into it because you want to feel secure and like secured in that relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So people do rush into things for sure.
No, I mean, I love how you said like rose-colored glasses. That's such a great metaphor, because I think that totally people like the idea of things, and then they actually experience it, and they're like, this is not that great.
Okay. Because it's like I said, like, you're not going to get some like crazy love. I mean, I can't speak for everyone. Maybe someone has, and for that, like, that is amazing. But a lot of the times, like, we're kids, right? Like, we're not ready for all that. No one's going to be buying someone like Cartier glasses, or not glasses, but like, I was thinking about that previous glasses comment I made, but like jewelry or something crazy that we'd expect we'd get from like, I don't know, like a gift or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's no one's getting that type of like, quote unquote, like princess treatment or something, because we're in high school, right? Like, most of us don't even have our own money, let alone like our own emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Right? So,
it's insane, because I think like what I love that you keep sort of like connecting back to is that we're literally kids. Like, you know, like our brains, our prefrontal cortex like isn't even completely developed yet. So I think what you mentioned before about like the influence of media, like even movies and TV shows, where it's like literally like 20-year-olds playing like 15 and 16-year-olds. It's kind of this like really like weird like situation where you're seeing someone who like, and you feel like you need to be like them, even though they've had like 5 more years of life experience than you, right? Like, so I was also wondering, what are some things you think people should take more time to understand before they get into a relationship?
My number one advice would be, and even advice, this goes for myself and everyone that I know, is take more time to get to know yourself. Just because I've always loved the quote, like, you can't love someone else until you love yourself. And I think that's so true, because oftentimes you can rush into a relationship, and oftentimes, yeah, the other person is the problem, right? And there's a lot of things, but a lot of the times you're the problem too, right? And, or not the problem, I don't want to put any blame necessarily on anyone, but like your own issues will come up, your own traumas can come up, your own preferences can come up that you don't even fully understand, you know? So definitely spend high school exploring relationships, absolutely, but it doesn't necessarily, like, don't put pressure on exploring that relationship. Like, if you can feel it dying out and it's been a week, let it die out. You know, if you feel it dying out and it's been 2 years, let it die out. Like, you will always have yourself at the end of the day. And as high schoolers, that's something that's really scary because we don't fully know ourselves or can be embarrassed to fully know ourselves and fully explore what we are and what we like. But definitely, yeah, my number one advice will always be get to know yourself before you rush into anything.
No, I love that. Thank you for saying, like, get to know your, like, I mean, you'll always have yourself. I think especially for, like, young women, that's very validating.
Absolutely.
Because I think that, unfortunately, there just sort of is this connotation of, like, if a man dates, like, multiple women, he's considered, like, a player, right? It's considered cool. It's considered, like, yeah, he likes to get around. Like, likewise, if a woman dates multiple men, it's like, you know, she's shamed, it's considered, like, inappropriate, she's considered, like, crass. And so I think that, like, again, with dating as, like, young girls also, they kind of use it to fill the sort of, like, not for everyone, of course, but a lot of people do struggle with just dating so that they can feel better about themselves, right? So, which can lead to, like, a number of different self-esteem issues.
Absolutely, yeah. And going off what you said, like, a guy can be deemed cool. One thing I noticed, it's not exactly, like, on the same topic, but one thing I definitely noticed in high school is, especially, like, me being new to this high school, is, like, a lot of the girls, like, the way I could be introduced to knowing a girl is based off, like, oh, well, she went to dance, like, homecoming with this guy. Or, like, it's, like, we're always identified by, like, another man. Or, like, it's, like, almost, like property for a second, and, like, I guess more intense terms. But, yeah, that was definitely such a weird thing to really think back on. And, I mean, I can't think about if I was introduced in ways like that, like, oh, she went out with this guy, or, like, I heard her, like, talking to this guy or something like that, you know? And that's always just a bit disappointing because, I mean, we're such a new generation, yet we have so much to learn and so much to still change, right? But, yeah.
No, that's fast. Like, thank you for sharing that, because I think, like, also what I'm kind of curious about is, since you've graduated a couple months ago, just as a kind of final, like, wrap-up thing, how do you feel like your attitudes towards relationships and your perceptions towards being in a relationship has changed since high school to now where you're entering college?
I think I've definitely let a lot of that pressure go. I know myself personally, I was always super enamored with the idea of love because I thought that that's, like you said, that's the thing that can make me whole and I can find the one, right? And I guess as you kind of get a little bit older, and me saying that is crazy because I'm still so young, but I guess as you get a little bit older, you just kind of realize, like, no, I want to fall in love with myself first, you know? What do I like? What do I want to do? There's so many places you could meet this so-called one, but yeah, there's so many places that you could go to. You know what I mean? It's like that little change in mindset that I think I had, and more so of like, hey, what do I want to do today? You know what I mean? And waking up with an attitude like that every day, especially since, like, graduating, just because I think you have so much more free time between that little space of before going to college and stuff. But yeah, I think my attitude has definitely changed in a way where I'm more self-sufficient and I don't feel the need to chase some that is not really there. You know, maybe for some people it is, but it wasn't there for me. So
no, that's so beautiful, and especially to hear that as, like, a young high school student. So thank you so much for everything. I just kind of want to end on, like, sort of like a more, like, advice oriented note. If you could give one piece of advice to high schoolers, like, anywhere, about relationships or even about anything else, what would you say now?
What would I say now? Oh my gosh, that's kind of a daunting question. I always feel so scared before I preface this because I'm like, I don't want to say something and, like, ruin someone's life.
Oh, yeah.
I would say don't be scared to try new things. Don't be scared to not try new things, whether that's putting yourself first, whether that's making a mistake and putting someone else first. Like, in order to get somewhere, even in order to get somewhere where I am, and I'm like okay with the idea of like just being just myself, I think it's always important to just try new things and like see what you don't like. Don't be scared to make mistakes, and yeah, don't be scared to date the wrong person. Don't be scared to text someone that you like them and then you never respond. Like, don't be scared to put yourself out there, just because I think as teenagers we spend so much time thinking about how we're going to be perceived, and I know I spent a lot of high school thinking that way too. But yeah, I don't know, definitely just put yourself out there. Like, the worst thing that can happen is rejection, and once that happens you move on, you know?
Yeah. No, thank you so much. It was amazing talking to you, and you had so many amazing pieces of advice and information. So, thank you, Audrey.
Of course, thank you for having me.
That was Audrey, sharing her own take on relationships. Now, take a listen as Gwen and I sit down to talk about how relationships shape our lives and the questions we're still asking ourselves. Hi, I'm here with
Gwen Chiramonte.
Nice to meet you, Gwen. How are you?
I'm good.
So, would you first like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background.
So I'm Gwen Chiramonte, and I work for Campbell Teen and Family Therapy, and I'm a supervisor. So I supervise therapists that are working towards their license, and I also have some clients who are teens or adults. And then I worked for many, many, many years in Child Protective Services for Santa Clara County. And I also was an Army reservist, and I deployed for a year into Iraq, and I worked at a combat stress clinic there. So that's pretty much my background. I also did adoptions, and I work part-time for Jewish Family and Children's Services, Adoption Connection, and I do home studies for people looking to adopt children.
Oh, wow. Very, very interesting background.
Yeah.
So I guess we can just get started with the questions. So growing up, ever since I was a little girl, I feel like I've always liked the idea of crushes. I really liked princess Disney movies. I liked, towards the ending when they found their happily ever after. And there was this whole phase where you would notice someone and it felt exciting and new. And for me, more about that feeling, it was actually, I guess, the idea of being in a relationship. So I never dated. I haven't dated. I'm not dating right now. I never dated before. But even then, I remember kids who would do it. Some in elementary school, then by middle school, and especially high school, I felt like there were more and more people starting to pair off. And suddenly, relations became such a big topic with everyone and something that everyone was talking about that. So seeing that change, that kind of made me wonder, and a lot of my peers and my friends who weren't dating. So, from your perspective, do you think that many teenagers feel like they need to rush into romantic relationships at their adolescent age?
I feel like they talk about it a lot, but more of the ones that I've had in counseling are not rushing into it. And I go, I wonder if it's really not the norm. And I started looking at some studies when you asked that question. And it would appear that the Gen Zs are not having romantic relationships as much. And I go, that is interesting, because your question seemed to indicate you felt they were, but they sure sort of have a lot of romance on the mind and think about it a lot, talk about it to their friends. And I sort of think they're more doing things in groups than actually having romantic relationships. When they do, it tends to be more like junior, senior year, at least in my experience. And also the therapists that I supervise, I read their notes, I see, crushes, lots of crushes. And then there's so many more options out there. They know about LGBTQ, they know about trans. I mean, they're so knowledgeable. They know so much more than I did when I was a kid. So when they do feel that pressure, it may be because a lot of their friends are pairing up. It depends on which group you're in as to what you feel pressured to do. Or if you're in a group that's not pairing up and you're looking at, say, a group of popular kids, they're all pairing up. I want to be like them. So that is where the pressure would come. If you feel the rush is, I want to have a typical high school experience. I want to hit all of the highlights of high school before I leave. So that may be, I've heard that voiced. I haven't dated. The other thing is, one of my clients told me, I don't know how to flirt. I don't know how to show interest in someone I have a crush on. And that could be a big thing too, being shy or having social anxiety, not even knowing how to be friendly with somebody you might be interested in. So it's all of those things. And I know a lot of you of your age group went through the whole COVID lockdowns. So that was a really important time for developing social skills, being in Zoom school. So it's normal to want to belong and want to be a part of what's going on. So I think the Disney princess, too. So many people want to be the belle of the ball, but that's not a good reason to be in a relationship. The positives, though, about being in a relationship are you learn a lot. Empathy, thinking about somebody else's needs aside from your own, not being as self centered, communication.
When you said that actually people maybe aren't dating as much in the past, I feel like I can really resonate with that because I feel like school's, already a lot like where it's at. There's all this like academic pressure, stuff to do outside of school. So I do understand where it's like sometimes like being able to date, there just isn't the time for that. I've also seen that like I mentioned the princess movies. I used to watch a lot of romance movies, especially teen ones where, relationships seemed magical and full of these big dramatic moments. But I think as I've gotten older and as I've entered high school, I realized that a lot of those high school teen movies, I feel like that's not really like that in real life. And in fact, sometimes it feels like relationships now are less about those like genuine moments more than how they look online. And with that social media, even online dating culture being so present, it feels like our idea from romance on social media has changed. And so how does early exposure to social media in dating culture influence the way teens see relationships?
I think there's like two sides of it. One may be like overly romanticizing it, like there's things like Love Island, there's things like TikTok, there's following people on Instagram, there's pop culture, there's so many idols that you see, but they get into multiple relationships. You go, oh, look, they're really truly in love. And so I think some teens I talk to seem to have a healthy view of it on the other side, that people, that these don't always last. They don't have the happily ever after view as much anymore. I've even had some say, well, if I get into a romantic relationship, say junior, senior year, and we go off to different colleges, how do you sustain a long distance relationship? What if we don't know where we're going to end up going if we get accepted to some school far away? And they really think about that kind of thing, that, how do we make that work? So, and talk about academic pressure. I mean, when I went to school, you got a 4.0, that's as high as you could ever get. Look at it now, all these AP classes, people just about to collapse. And then someone's into a YouTube wormhole. The very same thing that I do my homework on also has the distractions on them that I can get into. And how do I resist just taking it? Well, set a timer or something, because you, next thing you know, an hour later, you're still not doing your homework. It's so tempting to get into that. But I do think there's a little bit more of a realistic view of romance as well as that fantasy side. There's both. So that balance is so important. Oh, and the other thing is so many extracurricular activities. There's theater, there's dance, there's choir, there's athletics. I've seen some people, I go, I don't know where you get the energy to still even think about dating or wanting that. Even with youthful energy, I don't know where you get it.
Yeah, I would definitely say that there is such an importance of being able to balance it because I feel like teenagers are doing so much, especially in California and in the Bay Area. So I feel like high school already feels like a time where you're figuring out who you are. And I definitely think there's different types of people, and I would say that I've seen some individuals who are like maybe from the outside to other people can seem like they shape their identity around whoever they're dating. Sometimes it works out, but other times it seems like they lose themselves in that process. So I wanted to ask, is there a specific time when it's technically too early to date, or how do you think that entering relationships too early or maybe at the wrong time can affect a teen's sense of identity and self-worth?
I think it really depends on their motivation. You know, if they really have a crush on somebody and it's not just for their status to belong, it can be the right time to try it. I remember I had a client who said, I don't know if I want to date, but I just want somebody to ask me out. I think she went on a couple of dates and then said, I really don't think I like him that much. She was pretty wise. She wasn't, she was only a freshman. They went to the movies a couple of times and then she said, I actually had to ask my mom for advice on how to get out of it because she said, I thought I was head over and heels for this guy. And then, after spending some time with him, I really wasn't. But to recognize that, I think she was ready to try it out, but that wasn't the right guy. And I just really complimented her for realizing it and not just going with it. That was really smart. So if I just want someone to ask me and then say yes, and then she figured out, okay, I said, so next time, what? She goes, I think I'll just play the field and kind of just get to know people first. She didn't get to know the person. And that I think is more like the hanging out in groups is a really good idea. You get to explore how you like this person, what it is about them, and not just, oh, I get to go out and be in this fantasy that I always dreamed about. And that's not the right reason. But I've seen some have some really good communication and talk about issues and really have a good time. But there's so many things going on in life. Those hormones are kicking in. You're forming your identity. So much is happening in the teen years that you have no control over. They say our cerebral cortex is being built up to the age of 25.
Oh, wow.
It's not completely formed yet. So I'd like to think we still make brain cells long after that. But that part, that's the impulse control, the logic, the reasoning, all of that is so important to make decisions. And those are the years where you are making important decisions may influence the rest of your life. So if you do get in too early or for the wrong reasons, then it could affect the rest of your life.
What do you think are some common misconceptions that teens have on dating that you've seen throughout working with adolescents?
Misconceptions that somebody else could make you happy, that it's a way to get away from home, like get out of the house, that it's a way to prove you're lovable. I've heard this, am I even lovable? So many times. Well, to whom are you lovable? Am I loved by my parents? Am I loved by my friends? Does it have to be a romance to show you're lovable? do you love yourself? Mostly we're trying to prove it to ourselves when we go out and seek that approval. If we have that secure feeling within ourselves, we don't need to do it through another person. But it's normal to want to be in love. Who wouldn't want that feeling? No, it's a giddy high, but it also can bring that terrible. It's like a roller coaster. So you can be so high one day and so low the next. If you feel like, does he or she love me? I don't know. Is it for sure? For sure. So it's very hard. And the misconceptions are that you can never have complete secure feelings in a relationship. Every day is a new day. You have to see what it brings. If you have doubts, a relationship is just going to bring more testing to see if it's real. You have enough of that already, and that insecurity. So no other person can bring happiness to you. I guess that's the one thing I would tell people.
No, I think that's very important to hear, especially sometimes in high school people have this mentality that if I don't date in high school, does that mean that I cannot date in the future, or like something about themselves specifically, like, do I not look pretty? Am I not likable, like you mentioned? And so I think that all plays into that. And so I've also, from what I've seen, I feel like boys and girls have very different perspectives on things. And so I do think that sometimes girls might maybe feel like they often get maybe more pressure from like their peers around them about having a boyfriend, or while guys might sometimes get pressure in like a different way. And so it's something like I feel like they're almost expected to prove themselves. So, have you noticed a differences in how boys and girls like experience dating as a whole?
I think, well, for one thing, when I get a boy in therapy, it's hard to get them to talk. The one thing that girls have, I think that boys don't, is there's so many resources for them because they talk to each other about feelings. Even if it's only one or two really, really close friends, they talk to each other about what they feel. And that is such a valuable resource. If they have some insecurity, they have somebody that they can talk to about it. And maybe they have pressure from some that aren't as close to them to, hey, you should go. I think he likes you. I think he likes you. You should, they might get that kind of a little bit of pressure, but they're really close friends. They won't. They know what to do and what not to do. And so I think the boys, there's more of a dare, kind of pushy, like, should collect as many as you can. I think that's dying down a little bit. It's not such a macho kind of thing as it used to be. I hope it is. I think men are becoming more willing to acknowledge their feminine side in your generation, which I think is much better for society as a whole. So it's just they're not wanting to be as communicative as girls. So they have to, like, for them to really realize a girl is interested in them is very hard for them to see. They're kind of still the ones that have to make the moves. There's still kind of that expectation. So that hasn't changed that much.
No, I can definitely see, or sometimes I do. For example, it can be like this one instance for homecoming. It's usually the guy that asks out the girl with like the poster. It's like it's kind of rare to see, if like, especially if they're not like, dating. It's usually rare to see the girl do it. But something that I wanted to touch on was that I feel like I have friends or classmates who sometimes their parents are in healthy relationships, and they often approach dating differently from maybe someone whose parents are divorced or are seeing a little bit more conflict. And so how much do you think family dynamics and what we see at home shape the way that we handle relationships ourselves?
I think it's really important. If you look at attachment styles, you can see that those form really early in kids. If they formed a healthy attachment in their family and they see healthy relationships between their parents, at least, I mean, I've even seen some really good relationships with co-parenting with separate parents, where they'll do everything to prioritize their kids and try not to make it painful for their kids. I mean, it's still hard. It's still a big change. But this is so important. We can't badmouth each other. We can't, make our children suffer. But seeing that being respectful to each other and working as a team and having a good relationship is so important. But that should extend to the kids. Um, Showing their kids that their kids are important, validating their kids' feelings is also as important as having a good relationship with each other. And I see too, like, parents that are too strict, they end up with rebellious kids if they don't start loosening up a little bit.
I definitely have seen that when parents are extremely strict, their kids do end up rebelling, and sometimes they rebel a lot more than parents who are less strict.
Right.
And so,
If they have healthy boundaries and they have healthy rules and they can show some trust, show their teens that they trust them, and maybe negotiate things a little bit. Oh, okay, can I stay out an hour later? Okay, I trust you. That goes a long ways to having a very secure teen, not somebody who's their buddy and say, oh yeah, stay out. We'll be the party host. You don't want that either. That's a little too much. So you've got some parents that are way too loosey-goosey.
yeah, definitely. So, how do you think can we begin fostering healthy conversations about relationships with, people in our community sometimes, including our parents and friends? Because I do think that sometimes it can feel awkward when you bring it up to your parents and maybe even friends. It's something that's not easy, that's not easy and can be hard to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have some that they have a really easy relationship with one parent or the other that they can talk about with things. But if parents actually say to their kids, you can talk to me about anything, but if there's something that you really need to talk about and you're not comfortable talking to me about, I will find somebody that you can talk to. That would be the message the parents could give. I feel like, just being open. Like, I try to be really snoopy when I go into a school, doctor's offices. I look at everything that's on the walls. It's good that we have phones and computers. We can look things up that way. But what's being posted out there? Are people saying, here's a resource for communities? That's important. Like, if you see things on the wall, do you need help with this? Do you need help with that? Here's someone you can talk to about it. Local newsletters. No. Do they advertise things? Because sometimes you're thinking, I really need help, but there's nobody I can go to. And sometimes the last person you want to talk to is your parent, because it might be embarrassing. And so it's not that they're not a good person. This is a question that's too embarrassing. I can't talk to my parent about this. There often is a good friend or an aunt, a quirky aunt that you can talk to. So just saying to your community, it's just like being that kind of a person yourself, that you're open to that. I mean, be a good friend and find those people. And if somebody is that for you, tell them how much they helped you. If you have a teacher or counselor at school or somebody that does that, somebody needs to hear that they helped. So they'll keep doing it for somebody else.
Do you feel like schools or communities are doing enough to educate teens about healthy relationships and boundaries? And if not, what are ways that do you think schools can or communities can improve or add?
I've often felt like they are more academically focused. They tend to find the kids that are disruptive. Like for a lot of schools have counselors there, but the silent kid that's really struggling, they don't seem to stand out. And I've, ended up with kids that really have serious mental health issues, but they don't come to anybody's attention. And yet, maybe their parents finally realize they're really struggling emotionally. So, how to identify those kids that really need somebody to to notice them? They may not. Their grades may be okay. They're maybe not the top student. They're having difficulty. I think that's something that we could try harder to look for. Some kids actually experience school as a horrible place. Some just barely survive it. They describe it as, having to force themselves to go every day. And some are really good and they love it and they have fun and they're popular. Others just can't wait to get out of there. So that's the one thing I think is looking for the silent sufferer, helping them to connect with other kids. I can't tell, at Campbell Teen and Family Therapy, we have a lot of kids that we call them school refusal. And most of it's because of social anxiety, not because of academic failure. They are terrified to go to school. And when I was a kid, the kids that didn't go to school, they were out causing trouble, cutting school and graffitiing or something like that. It's more now that fear. So how do we get everybody to have some kind of connection to others,
No,
even if it's not romance?
no, definitely. That's something new that I learned about, and I do think that is true. That sometimes they don't usually go for like the very quiet kid. It's usually sometimes like, it's like kind of like what's obvious, what they can see. And so I feel like advice from what I've heard is that like to love yourself first is everywhere. I feel like that there's this advice to love yourself first is everywhere. But no one, I guess, really explains how to actually do that. So, what are some tools or strategies have you seen that work for teens who want to maybe build their confidence and self-worth, maybe before seeking romantic validation?
I like to use like positive affirmations, because if you really look at doing that like twice a day in the mirror, it can really, really change the way you see yourself. It doesn't have to be ridiculous, like, I'm the most beautiful person in the world. It can be, I'm worthy of love and respect. I'm inherently worthy of love and respect. I have friends who care about me. A simple statement like that. I am a good friend to others. I make sure and look out for my friends. I care about my family members. Just things like that, too. I have energy. I work hard. Those kinds of affirmations, if you say them first when you wake up and right before you go to bed. And then also, I had a friend that told me, who's also a therapist, she said, I was starting to have days that just really sucked. And I go, well, what'd you do? And she goes, every morning I thought about 5 things I was grateful for that day. Just 5 things. And she said I did, and I started writing a gratitude journal. I felt my whole day change, that I'm grateful for about myself, about my life. And she said, here I am, a therapist. And I've told other people to do this, and I did it. And I actually turned my attitude around about myself and about my life. And I've used that on myself, and I've had teens use it, say them to me. What did you find today that you were grateful for? Because life is full of little traumas, things that can make you feel bad about yourself. Someone can be mean to you, and it can kind of ruin your day. So you need that fortitude. I've also thought about, well, did you do today that you were proud of? Like, think of something nice that you did for somebody today or that you felt good about yourself for. Because we tend to remember the bad things that happen longer than when you do the good. It just because they stick out more. So just thinking about trying to, when you label something bad, like call it cognitive distortions, black and white thinking, like, oh, I'll never get this right, or I'll, never, if you find yourself saying never, or I'm totally awful at this, or my friends, think I'm stupid, or comparing yourself to other people, really bad. Sometimes have you ever listened to BetterHelp advertisements?
I have seen so many BetterHelp advertisements. I've always wondered, like, is it legit for so many advertisements I've seen?
Yeah, they do. They do ones, they'll do little sayings. And I go, they've got some pretty good sayings in there, like comparison is the something something. And I go, some of these are pretty good, and I've written them down because when you compare yourself, there's always going to be somebody prettier, smarter, taller, short, whatever you want to be. There's somebody better. So what is the point of comparing yourself to somebody else? And so that'll just make you feel worse. Compare yourself to yourself. Did you do better than you did yesterday? Is more better your own personal growth in your personal best. Don't compare to other people. So just things like that really help you to grow and progress. And you have your whole life to keep working on yourself and to not be perfectionistic, because here's my to-do list, I only made it halfway through it, so I'm gonna do better tomorrow. Don't beat yourself up for something, because then it doesn't help. You get up tomorrow, you try again. Also, if you really do something you feel bad about, if you realize you said something you didn't mean to say, you hurt somebody's feeling, you make amends. You apologize. It takes such a weight off your chest. So you feel so much better if you can take someone aside and say, oh, I realized what I said just really came out wrong. I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. So you just keep trying to, and then you can use that in your affirmations. I did something that was hard, and I made that person, feel better, hopefully.
No, I definitely do agree, thinking that your biggest critic is yourself. And, you're the one that really, yourself, you look down upon yourself. And so, I really do think that affirmations, or thinking about the positives of something, or what you're grateful for, I do think that is so important. Like, especially with teenagers, it's like sometimes you don't really know who really you are, and then, like, there's like someone else who, you're always comparing yourself to. But I think it's really important to know that there will always be, someone out there that might be what you want to be most, or might be quote unquote better than you. But it's important to think about what you can do as a person and how you can improve on yourself.
Yeah.
And so that kind of brings me to kind of my last question for you. This might not just be for dating, but what would you say to a teenager who feels like being single makes them less than or left out? And what do you think for them is the most important thing to remember?
That if they feel like they're being left out because they're single, that would be their motivation to seek a partner. How would they feel if someone was seeking them out for that reason? That would be like that person's only seeking you so they can be a non-single person. So don't you want somebody to be with you because they feel like you're special, and not because they want to be with the in crowd and have a partner. So think about it like from a motivation standpoint. You don't want to just be doing it to conform. You want to be doing it because you are genuinely interested in that person, not because you want to be like the crowd. Now you see that you want approval to be like everybody else. But later down the road, you're going to have more, after you get out of high school and you're in college, you're going to say, that wasn't all that important. You're going to look back and say, it doesn't make any difference now, but I'm kind of glad that I waited. Or, you'll say, I had a whole lifetime to do all that. I did other things. And I get people to say, it happens when it happens, when it's the right time. You didn't find the right person in your town or your high school to have that happen, and you did other things. You performed in the theater play, or you got a great grade point average and you went to a great college. That happened instead, because not every single person had a great romance. I mean, you feel a burning desire for every single thing, every rite of passage to happen. I mean, with me, I wanted to have my license, and I didn't get it till I was 18. And now it doesn't seem all that important to anybody. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, don't you want to get your license? Oh, I have time. I'll just take an Uber. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Things change. What's important really changes.
I think that's definitely very interesting coming from, like when you're a teenager, it's like you want everything so quickly, but then you forget that you have so much time ahead of you.
Yeah. I'd have an even better one when you get to first year of college. You might go, gosh, I'm glad I waited, because you are the Miss Right, whoever.
Definitely. Is there anything that you want to add that you think it's very important for teenagers to know in general?
Just that this is a great time to be a teenager. I think you guys have it. I think it's really a good time to be a teenager. So many more options, so much more information, and I think you're going to teach us all something. That's pretty much all I have to say. I have a lot of respect. I'm learning a lot from this generation.
Definitely. Well, Gwen, I want to thank you so much again for this opportunity. I really learned a lot just talking to you for just an hour, and I do think it opened my perspective on a lot of things. So thank you.
Thank you.
So, in the end, we should treat love as an organic process, something which we hope to experience, cultivate, and celebrate, rather than trying to be part of a race of who experiences it first, whether it's a first date to a dance, or a first kiss, or worrying about if we'll ever find it. We can try finding it in ourselves first. Instead of seeking validation or love from another to compensate for gaps we may have in our self-esteem, we can view relationships as an opportunity to share love. As always, protect your peace when considering entering into a relationship. Consider any red flags or toxic behavior which you need to report to a trusted adult. Ultimately, there is no definite answer to when we may fall in love or be in a relationship. But one thing is true. Our journey with love starts with us. Love yourself for yourself. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The People We Meet. Stay tuned for more content about teen experiences and authentic conversations. Till next time.